this is day 23 of 33 days of Metamorphosis with me, Jelelle Awen. And maybe you've been following along with me every day, or this is your first video that you've watched, or you've watched some in the series. Just turning my shirt around here. And I imagine at this point you may have some questions that are bubbling up, that are starting to occur to you, that are related to your own life and process. And I welcome you to ask them on YouTube or on my Facebook. I will answer as much as I can, given the medium of it. But you can also message me or email at soulfulhearts@gmail.com. And of course, the most direct way to answer these questions that may be coming up is through an intro session, a free intro session for women over 30 with me, or for men and women with Gabriel and Raphael, or for women around 30 with Kalena. So that really, those intro sessions are the time and the space to apply Soulful Heart and this process and this way of life to you. And that's really what we do in that intro session. So I highly recommend it if you're quite drawn or you just are bubbling with interest about what we're offering. But what I felt to do today is I've been holding more sessions lately, partly due to this video series and drawing more interest, which is amazing, and some questions have been coming up. So I thought I would answer some of those in this video, and the more general ones that aren't necessarily specific to the woman that asked them, because it feels like they might apply universally and they might be useful to you. So one of the questions that came up recently was around how the higher consciousnesses, the higher consciousness states of 5D and 4D, how they begin to integrate into your life. Like, how do they really integrate as you work with your parts and you're accessing more higher consciousness states as well? Then how does that show up in everyday life? And I think I'd like to use myself as an example. That's really the only example that I have. For me, I experience altered states, so to speak, connected to intimacy. An intimacy that is very grounded, actually. So either the intimacy comes from my connection with Raphael, my husband, and this just galactic sex, lovemaking, and then I'm in the afterglow for hours. Not just the afterglow, it's really kundalini energies that are just moving through my whole system. And in that state, that can last for many hours. And I'm pretty altered then. I have difficulty remembering what things are called, directional sense. Many times things look like a video, where really everything is a TV screen. And I really get then how my perception is creating the reality in those moments. And it's the intimacy with Raphael, it's the love that I experience with him that pops that state. Another example is when I connect deeply with Metasoul aspects of mine who are in higher vibrational frequencies. So let's say I connect with an aspect, one of my most beloved, Morgaine, who's in Avalon, which is more of a fourth dimensional. And one time when I was living at the ranch, I asked her to just, can you just flood me with kundalini? And so she did. And because we're from the same Metasoul, the same individuated soul source, higher self, if you will. We're sisters, and so her frequency just activated me. And that one also lasted many hours, and I was in my gardens and just couldn't even, it was a pretty small garden, but I couldn't find my way around the garden. It was, I lost orientation, and the trees were, every leaf was shimmering with vibration, with energy. I remember distinctly, it's only a 10-minute walk from my garden to our house, and it felt like it was hours. There was no time. And I forgot the name of a spoon. I was just captivated by the arising isness of this spoon, and I couldn't remember what it was called. I think you could call these the kundalini, non-dual awakenings. It's really where the mind's grid, that's usually so tight in 3D, nothing gets through that grid. It just starts loosening with the meditative work, with the parts work, with this integration of Metasoul aspects that already have these states attained. They're already living in them. So it was my intimacy with Morgaine, this Avalonian aspect of me, that allowed for this infusion to come through. The other intimacy I experience is sometimes in community. We'll go on what I call wonder walks, and just being around one of them, one of my beloveds who's been doing this process for a while, they activate me, I activate them. So we end up in this altered state together, a wonder walk, where everything is arising and dissipating for us. This especially happens at the ocean, where one time Gabriel and I went to the ocean, and we were laying on the beach, and we definitely went to another dimension. There was definitely an overlay that happened of another dimension over the one we were in. I often feel that when I'm at the beach. Everything fades away, and in comes what I call golden earth reality, which is more 5D, overlays it. So these are some examples of what happens as you become also more intimate with yourself as the primary means. And one of the pieces of this that's coming to me is our protectors. Our 3D protectors have really guarded us from going into these states. Because if you think about it, they can be rather dangerous to our lives. They can make it challenging for us to function, or earn money, or do our jobs, or raise our kids, whatever we've lined up there in our 3D life. And I believe that part of why I can experience these things is because I've made room in my life for these altered states. I have a life in which I have the room for it, and it can move in. It can be, my consciousness can be more fluid, and so my protector, after many years of working with various forms of my protector, both masculine and feminine, has now pretty much rested to where I feel most of the time pretty much a lack of guardedness around myself, and it's more about setting healthy boundaries when needed. I don't even really need to set boundaries in the same way I used to anymore, because my frequency sets them, meaning I'm drawing what I most want. So I'm not having to say, no, I don't want this anymore. I'm saying, yes, I want more of this. That also leads to more altered states. If your energy is going toward no, no, I don't want any more toxic relationships. No, I don't want this job that isn't fulfilling my soul purpose. That's taking an energy away from a higher consciousness state that could come in, that's saying yes to love, and yes to intimacy, and yes to soul family connection, and yes to expression of your soul purpose work. So the more you're able to say yes in your life, the more you can let in bliss and joy and alteredness and whatever else you're wanting. I don't think those two are connected often enough in ascension teachings. So we really make the connection there. What you're choosing in your life in every single moment of every day is a choice of love or fear. And we don't judge that. We just look at that with you. And you can start feeling that for yourself too. And so there's so much desire, right, for these higher consciousness states, which I like to say we've been those higher consciousness states as a soul more than we've been human. Especially because a human lifetime is only maybe 80 years. And some of these higher dimensional aspects are immortal or live for 300 years. So when we agree as a soul to put on this human suit, we're saying that we want to remember ultimately. We want to bring these higher consciousness realities into this human suit. That, I believe, is ascension. And I also feel that we're meant to take the body along with us. So this is the aspect that feels quite new. Instead of just reaching these altered states in near-death experiences, or in astral travel, or even some people need to take an ayahuasca or a peyote or something like that, LSD, mushrooms, to launch them into something, to give them a taste of something, to wake them up. I don't feel that it's necessary, and yet I understand that for some souls, that's what parts of them need. They need a blast, like they need a jolt like that. I feel we can access these states without that kind of thing, without that kind of intervention, if you will. And this actually is what I'm talking about. It's a walking around sense of your sacred humanity and of new earth or golden earth now, that it's happening now. And the more that you connect with your parts and the protector rests and the punisher rests, these parts don't just rest, they actually integrate. They have a lot of gifts. So the protector becomes your guide to your Metasoul. It becomes the gatekeeper, we call it, that opens up all of these timelines for you, like I'm talking about, these timelines that allow you to move into the altered states that you're so craving. What happening for me connected to that is with my star family connection in the last couple of years, I will have merged overlapping consciousness states. One of the most distinct was I was standing at my kitchen cooking something, and then I was definitely overlaid into the Arcturian lightship in the orbit, and my Arcturian Metasoul aspect named Bink, who I often write about. And I just was with her. I was making something and I was with her. And then often light language will flow from me very organically. I'll just be singing it, mostly when I'm cooking. Something about cooking, I think I go into a little bit of an open state when I cook. So these things also obviously are hugely supported by going into meditative states and what the Celts called Imrama states, which are really shamanic journeys. This is what we take you on in our guided meditations, even if it's just taking you to a meadow and connecting you with Metatron, or Sophia, or your higher self. We're really taking you into this altered place in your consciousness with your eyes closed, removed a bit from the world, so that you can taste this, you can feel it. And this is also where I've been guided to as well. And then needing that space daily to just go there. My meditations are not structured, and I don't follow a particular, I can't, for some reason, I can't follow mantras and just repeat a mantra over and over, or sing a song over and over, or chant. I'm much more about journeying. Sometimes that journey will just be laying with Morgane and my gatekeeper, who is now protector, gatekeeper, and now is a guide, a bridge, and her name is Bridget. And I'll just lay in a grassy field with Morgane on one side and Bridget on my other, and they'll just infuse me with their frequencies. And it's just a beautiful bath of my Metasoul. And that infusion, then I take it out into my day, and it serves love with others in sessions, or it serves love with Raphael, or it serves love to myself, or I'll have those kind of meditations, or I'll have a galactic ambassadorship experience where I kind of show up and there's Metatron usually, and maybe Bink, and they'll say, "You're needed." And I'll say, "Okay." And they'll help me raise my frequency a bit. Music helps me a lot in doing that. It's probably the number one way that I do that. Stones, stone friends, crystals. I have a selenite wand that I just got. I don't know how I've lived without it this long, but I'm very happy to have it back. My Atlantis Metasoul aspect, Marika, is particularly happy that I have this. I think they used it a lot in Atlantis. So stones and music, and that sets me up for galactic ambassadorship, which I've had varying experiences with that. I've gone to sort of the front lines and talked to the reptilian king and Donald Trump's higher self. That was very interesting. I've written about these things from my blog and in my books. And in the galactic ambassadorship, I'm really, I just show up very open-hearted and vulnerable. I often even imagine myself almost naked. So in being with these beings that might be more polarized to fear or intensity, I just go in naked, and that disarms them. And often what ends up happening is they end up in tears, asking me for forgiveness, as, you know, if I'm representing humanity in that moment, if I'm representing the Divine Mother, they really want to feel forgiven for what they've done. And the answer that always comes is that you were part of a bigger picture. You played a role, and you were needed. And it's very compassionate. So coming out of something like a galactic ambassadorship, I imagine it's similar to people who do a lot of grid work for Gaia. I just haven't been, when I check in about doing grid work, I just kind of get this, that's being taken care of, and there's lots of souls doing that, and there's, and Gaia's taking care of herself on another level. So that's not necessarily just what I've been called to do. I've been more called to be a love ambassador, and that's at a galactic level. Sometimes I think that galactic level will be increasing in the next few years as star being contact starts happening, and disclosure, as Raphael and I talked about yesterday, that will become a bigger part of my purpose here. Right now, the biggest aspect is seeding Soulful Heart, is creating and offering. We joke around here that I'm the CEO of Soulful Heart, so that's what it feels like I'm really seeding right now, and for that seeds to keep growing in community and offering and training facilitators, whatever that looks like long term. So this, I'm sharing all of this to give you a sense of what the consciousness really starts looking like in answer to that question, and also a question I've gotten recently about what is the goal of all of this. this was specifically related to the soulful heart process, so I can speak to that for a moment. And I believe it applies to the bigger goal of ascension, which really to me is what I call sacred humanity. I don't believe it's to bypass or transcend being human. I don't believe it's to discard our human or our humanity. There can be quite an energy against our human. And to me, it's about being with our humanity and feeling it and healing with love the experience that we've had being human and the challenges of it, and the gifts of it. Because the other thing I feel so often with star beings is that they really appreciate our humanity and our tears and our capacities. So that's really, to me, that's the goal, is to these higher frequencies from the higher self or the Metasoul coming into our body and into a vibrating crystalline body that's becoming more and more crystal and vibrating higher and higher with vitality and health. I believe with that will come a much expanded lifespan. I hope that happens in my life. I would like that. Total dietary changes, maybe to the point where we're not even eating food anymore. I also believe a huge aspect of this is the healing of the emotional body. And that's what we're here primarily to focus on in Soulful Heart, because it is so behind. It's really, well, we could look at it as the cutting edge of where we're going next is healing this emotional body. Collectively, the collective emotional body, and individually, our emotional body. And we're offering this parts process. That's what I found just goes right in and is so efficient at naming, identifying, separating, differentiating, integrating, unifying. That kind of sums up actually what happens. So another goal is unification. So rather than there being a bunch of fragmented parts, you're moving more into wholeness again, into being your whole being, and that no parts of your life are compartmentalized from that, and all parts of your life reflect your sacred humanity and your most authentic self. So that's what has been happening for me. That is how I experience my life. I don't have compartments in my life. This one's separate from that one. It all flows. Maybe certain things still bring up reaction or triggers, but not very much anymore. So that's another goal, is that there's much less reactivity. There's much less emotional reactivity, because the original wounds, excuse me, I have a bit of congestion this morning. The original wounds that create the reactivity are healing, and the parts that are reactive are getting felt. So you don't feel the same reactions or triggers. You don't project so much either onto other people, because you're more contained in here. And of course that's a huge piece too, is to really, I've had a few people say to me lately, I really just want to know myself, Jelelle. I want to know myself. I want to love myself and all of my parts. I really want that. And that's what happens. One part at a time, you fall in love with yourself. You fall in love with these aspects. You learn to even love the difficult ones, like the Punisher, or a more shadow-based one like the Reptilian. You really do. And this internal love is what then changes how you are in the external world. So the way that people experience me, if they feel that I'm compassionate or loving, I've been called sweet, and that's fine, kind, without much judgment. I have quite a bit of discernment, but without the judgment, without the fear or the pushing out or judging myself. this is because of the inner work, right? The inner work is what leads to that. So intimacy, which is where I started this morning, intimacy is the goal. Intimacy with self, intimacy with others, and intimacy with the divine. So I'll let you digest that one, and I will see you and connect with you tomorrow or in the next video.